Welcome to another episode of Expected Buffalo, the podcast. It is Mailbag Thursday, and if you paid it, I said that really weird. Let's try that again. It's Mailbag Thursday. I said that like a very excited cheerleader at first. Mailbag Thursday. So, for those of you maybe that weren't watching yesterday or missed it, so every Thursday, for the most part, depending if there's games or anything else happening, um, the point of this Thursday podcast will be to answer questions that are sent in by fans. So I put it out yesterday, so I will share it and I'll share it at the end too. All questions are submitted through the email address that I set up. So it's xbpod@gmail.com. That is where we will accept questions going forward. So for our Mailbag Thursday. So you don't have to wait till Thursday to send them. Feel free to send them in ahead of time or wait till Thursday. It's up to you. So that is what we're going to go through today. There's a handful of questions that came in. But before we get to that, of course, we have to go talk about our sponsor, One Pie Pizza, located on 2185 Clinton Street in West Seneca. Open 7 days a week from 9 to 8. If you are a breakfast pizza person, open 9 o'clock, right up your alley. One Pie Pizza, onepiepizza.com. Check them out. Official sponsor of the podcast, One Pie Pizza. Okay, so like I said, we're going to answer a variety of questions on a variety of topics. The good news is the questions that came in, there was really no repeats. They're all different. You'd love to see that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 right now that we'll get to depending on timing. Maybe if there's some in the comments, I'll answer 1 or 2 more. But we'll definitely try to at least get through these 8 we have here. So, are we ready? Let's get right to it. So the first question, you'll see the pop at the bottom of your screen. I'll read it for our podcast audio people that listen, not live. The question is, if and when the Sabres make their next big swing in a trade or free agent signing, what is the bigger need? So David went on in his email here and talked about like defenseman or forward, but that was the crux of the question. So forward or defenseman? It's difficult to answer without knowing what happens. Does Byram get traded? Does Dylan Cousins get traded? This, that. There's some nuance with it. But let's say, for argument's sake, that we'll just go with the team as it is currently constructed. For me, I think that the top of the list still should be getting a top 4 defenseman. I think that's really hurting this team. Specifically, a right shot is what ideally you would want. They have Darlene and Byram, I guess, worked out as your top pair, but really, we talked about it yesterday. It's been years that they've been searching for that top defenseman for Owen Power to play with. So I think that is what the priority should be. Followed closely probably by another center. And again, this is all based on the roster as is. If Cousins is used as a piece, then maybe you want to get a centerman back. If you're moving Byram, maybe you want another defenseman or some sort of big package where you can get both. But I really think solidifying your defense, getting that last piece on that blue line, I think sets yourself up for success moving forward. So that is what I would target primarily. I can definitely listen to an argument about our center, especially if Tage is going to stay at wing and they're not going to put him back at center. That really increases your need at center because you just have Kulik and Cousins basically, and then McLeod is still around, but it's not a great center spine. So yeah, and center is right there, but I'll go defense in this regard here. All right, next question. This one comes from Tyler. Do you feel if there was no internal cap restrictions that Kevin Adams would be able to bring this team to greener pasture? So before we get to answering the question, I like to make this clear whenever this comes up. 1, I do not for sure know that there was any internal cap restrictions. I believe that there is. No one has confirmed it with me, but there's also a lot of evidence that tells me to the otherwise that there is not an internal cap. I mean, this is a team that still sits here with $7-8 million in cap space, unused while they floundered through a 13-game losing streaks that last in the Eastern Conference. I mean, just I think the financial restrictions, we don't need to really get into it again. We talked a lot about it yesterday, do exist. So, to answer the question, if there was no internal cap, do I think Adams would be able to bring the team, basically a playoff team? So I guess I'll put it this way. I don't think that. I'm gonna be careful how I say this. I don't think that there's been a situation that has been presented to him in terms of significant impact that has been prevented by not being able to pay. Now, I think there are instances where teams would have liked him to retain salary, which he didn't do. And maybe that reduces the type of pick you can get. Maybe that took some teams off the board. But I don't know if those would have significantly impacted the team one way or another. So, based on that, we look at where we are. He's in year 5 as the general manager, and he has been unable to put a team besides one season to get even close to being a playoff team. So that would lead me to say, I don't think it really makes a difference. He talks about a variety of things, which, we saw from the Athletic article with that player survey they did. I mean, there was taxes mentioned with the Sabres. There was, Sabres were number 2 on teams that would be on the no trade list. So those are all real things. Those are all legitimately things. But Kevin Adams, I think, put himself in that position based on putting a team on the ice that has not been successful, that has not won games. So saying all of that, it's hard for me to sit here and make an argument that if there was no restrictions on him whatsoever, that he'd be able to put a team together. In terms of finances, he was still to deal with that. It's not fair to say, and if there was no trade clause, like, we're not going to give it that easy of a pass, that make excuses. I just think if you took away any financial impacts, burdens on him, that I can't make a compelling argument that he could get this team to where they need to be. Now, if he does it, great. But there's really no evidence I can sit here and provide to you that he would be able to do it, because he hasn't done it to this point, and he honestly hasn't got close. And the more we get further and further away from that season, it looks like you just got a lucky one career year, everybody hit at one time type deal, and nothing has really come close since that. All right. Thank you, Tyler, for that one. Up next, a little bit of a trade question here. Would a 1-for-1 Owen Power for Elias Pettersson be something that would work for Vancouver? So this question comes from Michael. I think this changes based on what has happened in the last, 48, 72, 96 hours. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, what I think of Power and Pettersson trade is on the table, like 1-for-1, would that be something to consider? Maybe. I still think that Vancouver would ask for more, and the reason is because they need a centerman to replace Pettersson. Sure, they did have a need on the blue line, but if you're taking out your top center after trading JT Miller, you got to get another centerman back. So I'm not sure if a 1-for-1 would have worked for them, but now I'm even more sure a 1-for-1 would not work for them now because of the Marcus Pettersson contract. They went and gave up a first-round pick that they got for trading Miller. They flipped it, and then they handed Pettersson a long-term contract. So really, I think that solidifies. I don't want to say that solidifies them because, as we talked about yesterday, there still probably is a hole that they could use another defenseman. But I think now in any Pettersson trade, the demand for a centerman is more important than the demand for a defenseman. They addressed that a little bit with Marcus Pettersson. So, yeah, I guess to answer the question, no. I don't think at this point a 1-for-1 would work for Vancouver, and it probably wouldn't have worked even a couple weeks ago because, again, I think they really need that centerman back. Up next, question from Scott. What are the chances Cousins is on the team next year? Who is your team to watch in acquiring him? Dylan Cousins, his name seems to pop up every single day in some sort of trade thing, whether it's connect to a new team, whether there's a player that pops up in the rumor mill that, maybe Cousins is a good trade idea here. So we'll start with what are the chances on he's on the team next year? Of course, you never say never, but it seems like from some conversations and also just from everything, he's out there very clearly. He's almost been traded a few times now that they're looking to move him. So I would say the odds of him being on the team next year are slim. If they can't find a trade, of course, they're just going to hold on to him. I mean, you don't need to force anything. You kind of just maybe let it play out. Maybe he finds it. I don't think he will, but you never know. But I would say overall, I think the chances of him being on the team next year are relatively small. Now, who is the team? Who is the favorite? Who's the team to watch? It's a good question. So, Kevin Weeks mentioned the Red Wings. He mentioned Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. We know is part of it. I said yesterday, I believe Chicago has inquired too. Pierre LeBrun set up to 20 teams. So a lot of teams have asked. It's really difficult to pinpoint who the favorite would be at this point. We know there's some Calgary smoke there. Maybe you can put them up there. I think Vancouver still, as long as Elias Pettersson kind of goes on here, is still someone that you would want to put Vancouver up near the top. Maybe not near the top, but I think they'd be in the picture. I don't buy the Toronto Montreal thing. I don't think they're going to trade him in the division. If they did, it'd have to be a super nice return back. I know that some general managers don't care about that. Some general managers do care about that. I just think that's a little bit of, I don't know, risk. But I guess if you're getting something back, like who cares? You're getting a good player back that you think is going to help your team. So what's the big deal behind that? But I just kind of think, in there. The Detroit thing, I think, is dead. I think that there was a possibility. Well, I think they were pretty close on something before the roster freeze that involved a youngish player on the Red Wings that is sort of starting to establish himself now. So the coaching change and how well the Red Wings are playing, I don't think they're eager to do anything big or pull a significant player off their roster at this point. So that's out the window. Chicago, I don't really know exactly what the interest would be there or who the players coming back would be. So I don't know. And there could be a dark horse team. I mean, like Columbus. I wonder if they would be interested for a centerman. I mean, you can just go through the list, right, of teams that you would think, would have some interest there. Nashville was a team I think that was early in the season that was mentioned. But again, I don't really know what the fit would be there in terms of something coming back. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of talking around without really answering the question. I don't know if I can pinpoint a favorite right now. I think it's very much up in the air. I think they're open to whatever is going to be presented to them, and they'll find the best deal. And if they have to hold until the draft or the offseason, I think that they'll do that. I don't think they're rushing in anything, especially where they are right now. There's no urgency really to force something just to make a trade. And while we would like to see that, realistically, they're not in the playoff picture. Now, if they go on a little bit of a run here and get themselves within 5 or 6 points by the time the deadline pops around, then different conversation. But I think right now they'll kind of just let this play out, and if something presents itself, then they'll go ahead and take advantage of it. All right, moving to the next one. This one comes from Andrew. So, talking about the season is over. So the season is over. Is it possible for them to make the playoffs next season without a major acquisition like Pettersson? I felt like it was all. I felt like can't talk. I felt like I was hanging all my hope on that. So of course they can make the playoffs next season without making a big move, and this is the NHL after all. Half the teams make the league. I know the Sabres have decided to not do that for 14 years. But half the teams make the league. It's not that difficult as the Sabres make it. Hockey is a silly game at the times where you can get a hot goaltender. You can get we've seen it. You saw the hot goaltender last year. We saw the hot scoring 2 years ago. Maybe one year you get that all to come together and you have a decent, really good season, and that puts you in spots to be a playoff team. So I don't think there has to be a big move to put them over the top. Of course, to make your roster better and to increase your odds and improve upon them, you certainly would want to do that. You'd want to shake up this roster who has shown you that they are unable to get to where they need to get to as currently constructed. So my suggestion would be to definitely find your way to move one of these core pieces off, bring something else in new that kind of jolts your team and resets yourself without going too crazy. Because really, nobody in the NHL does a full rebuild reset anymore. The teams that have like Chicago find themselves continuously spinning their wheels. It just doesn't work anymore. It takes too long to build your team back together. You're better off doing quick resets and then keep going. Doing a full rebuild is just it's not the way it works anymore. Those teardowns and longs and lots of drafts, that's just not efficient enough before the guy that you got at the top, gets frustrated or wants out, or you start to have issues with that. So the Sabres can definitely, I think, find themselves to a quick little core reset, and then be on their way, and hopefully, make the playoffs next year, or at the very least, just be in the conversation. But making the playoffs would be nice. Let's go to Mike. So Mike's asked about AHL. Do you think Rosine gets and/or deserves an extended look? Are there any other prospects, Brian Johnson, Komarov, Oslin, that you'd like to see brought up this year? So Rosine, I think, should get a look here. Like, he more than deserves it. He's on pace, I think, for 30 goals this year, 60 points on the Amerks. He's been down there for three or 4 years now. It's time to see what you have there, and this is the time of the year you're really out of the picture. Give some of these guys a run and see what they can do. Not 5 minutes on the fourth line, which they didn't do the first game. He played in the top line and then got bumped down a few lines or a little bit of a juggle, and still he played a decent amount of minutes, good enough. I think it was probably, believe it or not, his best NHL game, the limited time he's got. I think he flashed a little bit more. He got some shot attempts. I still would like him to get to the middle of the ice a little bit more. I think there were some jitters, some hesitation your first NHL game. So hopefully we see that continue to improve here. It's probably super bad luck for him that the Four Nations break's coming up. What exactly is going to happen? He will play in Nashville, and then he will be sent down to the Amerks for 2 weeks. He's not just going to hang out. So that's probably a bit of bad luck, because coming out of that break, you're going to have Jordan Greenway back. Tage will be healthy. Kozak will be healthy. So really, there's probably not a spot for him. So I guess going back to the first part of this question, I'm not sure he'll get an extended look. I think he deserves one, but I'm not so sure he's going to get one unless we see a player moved out, because they're going to get some guys back. And yeah, that's probably not going to leave him much opportunity there. Now, in terms of other guys I want to see, so Ryan Johnson for me is a best case scenario sixth or seventh defenseman in the NHL. I don't really need to see that again. If they move some guys out and they want to bring them up, great, fine. But I don't really need to see it. Komarov, I think, has a long way to go. He's played a little bit better as of late, but I think there's really a long way to go there. So for him, Oslin I wouldn't touch. Wahlberg I wouldn't touch. I would kind of just leave them. But that brings me to one player, a defenseman, that I do have a little bit of interest in seeing Novikov, but I have some hesitation to that. So I think his skating continues to be an issue, and when that's an issue at the AHL level, it's usually not good for your fortunes in the NHL. I think it's improved. I think it's gotten better. It's not as bad as it was when he was a rookie last year, but it's still something that pops up from time to time. I think that puts him in bad situations in terms of, plays in the defensive zone, rushing things, panic moves. And we can kind of see it, in the numbers here, that His exit numbers. Well, let's start with his failed exits in the top right. His failed exits are the second highest on the team. Now, that's gotten a little bit better in our tracking data, but still 27%. Komarov at the lead at the top. That's not great. Um, Percentage of controlled exits, he's the worst on the team at 48%. Not ideal. There's a little bit more offensive game coming from him, so he's pretty good on entries at the bottom for a defenseman. We look at the other defensemen on the roster. Uh, in terms of primary shot contributions, he's not that high, middle of the pack, if you will. But I think that's kind of, I think that's maybe, I don't want to say covered up a little bit by Ryan Johnson, how much he's involved with shot attempts and getting offensive opportunities. Rathbone too is another one I think that's really inflated by. As you can see, the giant red bar is definitely inflated by shot attempts. That dude loves to shoot the puck. So I think maybe that pushed him down the list a little bit from a defensive standpoint. Uh, but I still think later in the season where you're at, that it doesn't hurt to give him an opportunity. I'm not extremely confident that it'll go all that well, uh, but it's worth a look. I think he's earned it. I think he deserves it. He's played well. You're seeing improvements along the way. He is a right shot defenseman too. So near the end of the season, when things are probably officially done, maybe in the last week or two before the Amherst themselves head to the playoffs, I would probably give him an opportunity to get a game or two, or maybe a week, get a couple games in and see how that goes. Maybe build some confidence going into the AHL postseason for him. Okay, a couple more questions here. Two more questions that I have left. So let's go. I'm trying to think which one I want to go to next. Let's go to this one before we go to the last one. So this one comes from Brian. What do you think happens with Henry Jokiharju in the next 6 months? So, well, I'll say this. I don't think he's on the team next season. So we'll start with that. I think with Brian, if I remember his email correctly, it was kind of like, will there be a trade? Will he just leave in free agency? I think that's more the direction he was going here. I think they will look to move him. I believe they did try to in the Kako trade. He was the piece. The Rangers wanted a right shot defenseman. It was basically the best thing the Sabres could throw on the table. They went with Will Borgen. I would have done the same thing. But he's out there and they are open to moving him. A right shot defenseman at 24, 25 years old might hold some value. Maybe he goes and plays well at the Four Nations for Finland and some teams get some eyes on him and, maybe there's some interest. The return's not going to be a lot. Maybe he's a throw in on a trade and, to increase the value of it a little bit to help get something over the finish line. But one way or another, I don't think he's back next season. He's been healthy scratched numerous times and he's lost his top 4 spot. I just don't think that there is a desire organizationally for him to continue beyond this season. So there's certainly a possibility that he is moved by the deadline. But, I think for sure we can safely say he's not going to be on the team next season. All right. Last question from Ed here. This is a little bit of an interesting one. Sabres related, but I guess more Sabres related. In retrospect, does Don Granato deserve more credit for trying to get this bunch of Sabres to perform consistently on an NHL basis? You look at the way this team has performed this season. Mostly the same roster, of course, with some changes. Granato has got this roster, and you can make the case maybe arguably a worse one. Previously, maybe the year before, maybe the 91 point team definitely exceeded expectations. And then last year they were an 84 point team, I think, and right now they're on pace for about 76. So I think in that regard, he should get credit for that. But I also think it's important to understand realistically kind of what he is, and that is a developmental coach. I think that's where he succeeds the best. I think for a team like San Jose or Chicago or somebody coming up from the bottom and trying to work the way up. I think he could be a good option for them. I just think when things got difficult in terms of on ice decisions, in terms of lineup decisions, when you're expected to win and when you're expected to be a playoff team, didn't go well for him. I think he struggled with that. He struggled with in-game decisions in big moments. And while he still got this team at least 2 years ago to exceed expectations, and maybe last year was right on expectations, honestly, with kind of what the thought I was, going into the season. A lot of the models had him around mid 80s. I think he deserves more credit looking back than what he got and how it ended. And I'm curious, if he'll get another job in the NHL. I think he deserves one. He'll probably have to be an assistant first, probably before he gets a head coaching job again. But I think if he wants it, that he certainly deserves another opportunity to get behind an NHL bench and then see what he can do. Because a lot of these guys in the team would not be what they are without him. I mean, a lot of these guys, you could look, they've regressed. Quinn, Cousins continue. I mean, Cousins regressed last year under Granato, but Pacheco's had his ups and downs too. But still, like, he got them to be to the point of what we expect, what we set our ceiling at because of the ways they played under Granato over the last 2 years. So, yeah, I think it's a shame ultimately how it ended. And don't get me wrong, at the end, I thought he had to go too, and it was the right decision, for a team that wanted to go where they wanted to go. But I think it's a coaching career that I think we should. In the 14-year drought, you can make an argument it's one of their better coaches in terms of getting this team to perform above what their expectations are. And honestly, he's the coach who had the best season, to put it quite frankly, over the last 14 years. So he at least gets to hang on to that. All right, nearly 30 minutes here. So not bad. I didn't know if it would actually go that long. Let's see. I don't really see any other questions in the chat here that's worth bringing up that we didn't already talk about. Mike asked about the defense. So this question here, we did already touch on that a little bit. Don't think we need to rehash that one. So yeah, I mean, I think about 30 minutes is good. For going. God, what did we go? An hour and 20 minutes yesterday. I did not expect us to go that long either. I think for a mailbag, about 30 to 45 minutes is right where you want to be. So, yeah, so I appreciate everybody for watching. Show number 2 in the books here. And then next week, like I said last night, next week on Monday, we'll be back again, and I'll be over here. Like the new podcast table came in. So I'll be on this wall over here with some nice stuff behind me, a little bit more professional here as we get these going along even more. I don't really have anything crazy to look forward to next week yet, but stay tuned. We might have I might be able to share some of that. If he's listening, I will tell Eddie to get ready, because I think after this weekend, we're going to get a little bit of a Bandits talk maybe on Thursday. Makes sense next week. We'll do our mailbag, and then we'll get Eddie on for some Bandits talk too. So we'll have some fun with that, because I promised him 3 days a week that we would have some more time for lacrosse conversation. So we'll get Eddie his airtime on here, talk a little bit of lacrosse next week as the Bandits remain undefeated. So we got to give them they're going for the three-peat. The real team going for the three-peat. The Buffalo Bandits undefeated. Maybe they can do the undefeated season. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy Super Bowl weekend. For those that will be watching, I will reluctantly be one of them. It's a fun experience, fun event, so you can't pass it up. All right. Well, I will talk to everybody next week. Enjoy the game on Saturday, maybe 5 in a row going into the break. And then we have 2 weeks off to talk trades, where the team's going to go, all of that fun stuff over the next 2 weeks. All right. Talk to you then. See ya.